Thank you so much for joining us today, Kathleen. I appreciate you being here.
Glad to be on.
Awesome. So I'm just going to let our listeners know that today's a little bit different. Excuse me. Usually we have on, medical professionals, luminaries to share information with parents. So today we're mixing it up a little bit. We have a parent to share information with other parents. So again, just sincerely thank you for being here, sharing all the details, putting yourself out there. And I know that this will help some other parent that's listening. So thank you.
Well, I'm glad to be a help. So thanks for reaching out.
Of course, of course. So let's just go ahead and start. If
Mhm.
you wouldn't mind, just tell us a little bit about you and Jubal and how your airway journey started.
Sure. So my name is Kathleen, and I have been a mother now for a little over 7 years. Jubal is our first. And before becoming a mother, I worked with our local sleep doctor in his practice, taking notes for him during appointments. And so through that, I did learn a good bit about sleep apnea, airway difficulties, health issues that fall downstream from that. But I only saw it from the adult side of treatment. We rarely had children with any kind of difficulties coming in.
Okay.
So Jubal came along. I became a stay-at-home mother, which was the best job upgrade ever. And he was just always fine, cheerful, chipper, happy little boy, happy-go-lucky. Um, and then somewhere along the way, he just started being a little bit harder to wake up in the mornings, a little bit harder to get going in the mornings. Just kind of didn't really think anything of it. It just happened very gradually. And there was just also the fact that, children go through growth spurs, children are changing, things happen
Hmm.
that make those things predictable.
Right.
One thing we often had with him every year, he would have some major, major bout with croup. Croup was his nemesis for a very long time. When he was 18 months, he was actually hospitalized for 3 days for such
Oh,
a bad
wow.
of it. And again, it was just one of those things that we never really thought anything of. Just, oh, he's prone to it. Some kids are.
Hmm.
And then in my book group with some other moms, one of that group had begun seeing Dr. Christensen in our area for airway treatment for her children. And so she began sharing some details about the improvements they were seeing on various fronts. And all of these little pockets of sleep related education that I had gotten years back started clicking in my brain.
Hmm.
And another mom was saying, "Oh, my husband saw that same sleep doctor that Kathleen used to work for and was told that because of his sleep apnea that had been undiagnosed since childhood, like his parents knew about it, had heard of him doing horrible episodes of not breathing. He had never been treated for it until after they got married. She basically sent him to the doctor right away. And the
Mm.
doctor told him, "You probably should have been taller. You probably shouldn't have all of these health issues that you have. It would probably have helped if you had gotten this seen a lot sooner."
Right.
And so all of a sudden, my brain is taking these two bits of information, the man that my child may become if this is left untreated, and the fact that we have a doctor, an orthodontist in the area that treats children as soon as the age of 3. So I thought to myself, we are getting in there right now because I had no idea
Hmm.
you could even do anything for children. Because I had noticed that Jubal would stop breathing at night. I was like, this is sleep apnea. He's got it. But what are you going to do? Put a kid on a CPAP? Like, whatever. Uh,
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
yeah.
That's what we all thought.
Yeah. And so we popped down to Lewiston, and Dr. Christensen said, yeah, that jaw, that mouth structure. Jubal got my retrognathia setback fun times mouth. So we started getting him going. And shortly before our initial consultation with Dr. Christensen, Jubal had had a checkup with our family doctor who just made the offhand comment, man, his tonsils and adenoids are just huge. There is no room in that throat. They are so inflamed. And thought to myself, well, good thing we're getting this all checked out in a couple days here
Right.
because I think we're going to have some improvement from what I hear. And sure enough, we get the first round of expansion begun 6 days into treatment, I happened to go into the kid's bedroom one night for something, and I just stood there dumbfounded because I realized for the first time in years, I had to listen for Jubal's breathing.
How far into this was this?
6 days.
6 days.
6 days of having an expander in that we would turn however many times a turn daily, we were told, to push the jaws apart. And I thought to myself, "Oh my goodness." Normally, I walk in and he's all raspy, he's all, maybe making a cough, just, you know, you can tell when he's asleep because you hear him.
Sure.
And
Right.
here I
Right.
am like, "Are you fooling me? Are you actually breathing? What are we doing here?" And sure enough, he was deep, peaceful, calm breaths. And it was probably about a week after that I went in again, and not only was it the same deep, calm, peaceful breaths that I had to actually pay attention to hear, he was flat on his back, which normally his body would never sleep on his back because he would just
Right.
choke out way too bad.
Right. They have to angle. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So he's always been my curled up on the stomach kind of sleeper guy because he
Mm-hmm.
couldn't breathe otherwise. And so to find him sprawled out with maybe a little hint of a to it, I was just dumbfounded. But
Oh,
then
that's
beyond
amazing.
that, in the mornings, that was when we realized how much of our Jubal we had lost because we started finding the Jubal coming back. So in the mornings, instead of the zombie that would come and sit on the couch and take an 30 to 45-minute period to come fully awake, the zombie that sometimes, "What would you like for breakfast?" would send into a fit because I can't even handle her right now, don't even talk to me like
Wow.
that child was gone. We had no zombie. And instead, we had our chipper, happy boy marching out, "Good morning, dad. Good morning, mom. What's for breakfast?"
That is
And just realizing,
amazing.
"Where have you been? I did not realize we had lost you. And how
And
long
how
have we
old
been
was he
missing?"
when
He
you started
just turned
this?
7 in July,
Okay.
so he probably was just about 6 when we started. I think it's been a little over a year that we've had this adventure.
Wow.
And
Oh
we
my God.
watched him go through REM rebound, which was something I remembered from my scribe days. People would
Mm-hmm.
get on CPAP, their bodies would go back into REM because they could breathe and not choke out all the time. And so their bodies would go into REM overdrive to make up for lost time, and they would report significant increase in dreams or strange dreams or, very vivid things. And so it became very normal for a few weeks for Jubal. "Oh, let me tell you about this crazy dream I had last night. Last time I had two crazy dreams." And so it was a
Wow.
definite change. And he's just gotten more and more alert, awake, and just him happy. And it's been a huge blessing from
Now, are you
something as simple as airway
a simple,
expansion.
right? Are you noticing a change in him when it comes to school or how he engages with other children?
Not so much child engagement. That's always been something that in our family we try to keep a firm grip on, is that you are kind to others even when you don't feel like it or when you're
Mhm.
tired, and something we all have to work on and learn. So
Right.
there were things that he was more tempted to, perhaps, when he was much more sleep deprived and having issues, that we would not allow him to get away with, you could say. So
Outbursts, that
he
kind of thing.
sure, yeah, like
Yeah.
we might see those things, but we wouldn't tolerate them. And so I don't know that I would say that we've seen a dramatic difference in that regard. And we're about to kick off another school year here. And so I anticipate that some of the struggles that we had last year with focusing and, some of his subjects he just loved. So, like every kid, they love their thing and other
Mm-hmm.
things are hard. But
Right.
I'm hopeful that we'll see some improvement in just the ease with which some of these concepts are grasped and implemented. And
I just can't. That is
so,
amazing. It's such a difference. And
yeah.
you're among the fortunate. I mean, you knew
Yes.
what to do. I've joked before we should change the title of this podcast to "You Don't Know What You Don't Know."
Right. Yeah.
because his parents, I mean, we had no idea.
Sure.
But once you know about it,
Hmm.
you just can't not know about it. You can't not do
Exactly.
something about it. And just to see this kind of
Exactly.
transformation is, to me, that's proof of what it can do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as parents, I mean, what was that like for you and your husband? I guess both sides of it, right? In the beginning, watching your child struggle and have these, horrible nights and lethargic mornings
Yeah.
versus now. I mean, how is that for you guys?
It's just a huge relief just to realize that not only was there a big problem that was probably bigger than we realized, but that we were given the opportunity to have it alleviated relatively easily. And, you can play what if all day. What if we didn't
Sure.
know? What if, and that's just not helpful.
Right.
But we can honestly say there's a good chance he would have had a lot of issues for a very long time that would
Mhm.
be very difficult to overcome in adulthood if we weren't given the privilege of finding out about these things when we did. That's a
Of
huge
course.
mercy that we were
Of
given.
course. Yeah, and I think some of the what if is taken away because there's enough research and data to tell you what
Sure.
would happen. It was
Right.
just, which one of those would he have had to live with,
Right, exactly.
right?
Like pick your poison. Yeah.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Now, have you seen this in any of your other children or
We have our almost 5-year-old with expansion because we looked at her and thought, "Oh, well, sure, her mouth shape is so much different than his, probably no big deal." And then our first interview with Dr. Christensen with Jubal, some of the things he said, "Oh, well, what about her? What about Tilly? What do you think?" And he took a quick look and, no, not as much room in there as we'd want to see. I'm like, "Well, sign her up." Next.
everybody?
That's right. So we're about to have our 3-year-old start soon because
Oh, wow.
she's much more similarly shaped to Jubal, and 3 is
Okay.
as early as Dr. Christensen takes them. So we're just kind of lining them up.
Right? Oh my gosh. And I mean, at this point, Jubal's probably too young to really understand. Does he have any concept of a change? Does he feel any different? Has he been able to verbalize that?
When it first was happening, definitely. But
Okay.
it's been about a year for him now. And so I think that for him, that, when you're a child, a year is so
It's just
long and
gone.
just
Mm-hmm.
you don't remember. And so I,
Yeah, it was
I
just normal happy
anticipate that
kid.
exactly. I anticipate that maybe he could look back and be a little, oh, I remember when it was a little hard to get up in the mornings, but
Right.
I kind of guess that that's how it would be for him.
Right. Well, and that makes sense. That's awesome though.
Yeah.
As far as, obviously Dr. Christensen, you were fortunate because you knew who it
Yeah.
was. You
Yeah.
had somewhere to go. And
Yep.
there are so many parents we're finding now that there's just not anybody in their area. So
Yeah.
I will make sure in the podcast notes we do put the link to this, but your Airway Health Solutions, for example, has a search that you can go find a
Oh,
doctor.
fantastic.
Yeah.
That's good
And
news.
absolutely, it's great. So, what kind of advice could you share with parents that are running into obstacles? One of the things we hear a lot is, well, I went to my dentist or I went to my pediatrician and they said, don't worry about it. They'll grow out of it.
Hmm.
As a parent, what would you say to another parent?
Be tenacious. Keep asking, keep finding, keep looking. Decide for yourself how far you're willing to drive, how how far you can go. And also learn to trust and be okay with closed doors. As a parent, you want the best for your child because you love your
Mm-hmm.
child,
Right.
but you can't always get the best for them. Do your best to get the best, but can you get less, which is better than nothing?
Mm-hmm.
So find out what you can get. If everybody else that is, going to be fantastic is too far away to make the drive, maybe somebody closer will do at least something part way, which is better
Mm-hmm.
than nothing. Maybe there's somebody in your area that would partner with somebody farther away so you could see somebody far away for some initial things and get a treatment plan and maybe pay somebody closer to do the work and
Mm-hmm.
do some
Mm-hmm.
intermediary check-ins. I don't know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but don't take no for an answer, but also learn that we can't always get the yes we wanted. And what kind of yes can we get?
I like that. And then as far as I'm not sure, I don't want to make this assumption, but it doesn't
Sure.
sound like you had as much guilt and consternation as some parents do because you
Sure.
already had a little bit of a background. So it was a little easier for you to
Right.
catch it and transition.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm sure you've run into other parents that are, what do you
Yeah.
say to them?
You do your best for your child with the data you had at the time you made the decision. And
Mhm.
if you didn't have XYZ, that's not your fault.
Right.
And it's so easy to again play what if, or I should have known. It's well, but you didn't.
Mhm.
And that can be really hard to accept. I just didn't know.
Yeah.
And I wish I had. I wish I could have done. I wish that this, but it wasn't an option. And so that's how it was. How are we now? Where are we now? What can we do now to make tomorrow better? Because we can't change yesterday, but we can
That's,
work today, we can work
yep.
tomorrow, and we can move forward from where we are. But wishing we were over there where we should have been, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't our story, that wasn't our path. So let's live our story and live our path and be the best we can on that journey.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I couldn't have said that better myself. And it's hard as a parent. And I will tell you, working with the foundation and hosting the podcast, even, it's really hard not to do that to yourself.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
are there any other, changes that you guys have implemented to help support Jubal's journey as far as, the exercises or myofunctional therapy or changes in eating habits or sleep hygiene?
Sure. The myofunctional therapy step comes later in Dr. Christensen's treatment plan. He
Okay.
used to do tongue tie releases and things like that more immediately. And
Mm-hmm.
then the therapist that follows his work afterwards told him, I'd really love to have more room in the mouth in order to help these kids work these things, learn these new habits with their tongue, etc., properly. So there are things that will happen later in
Okay.
the myofunctional arena. But for right now, we're doing more upper expansion. Once his lower 6-year molars finish coming through, we'll do lower expansion, make a whole bunch of room in there, start
Mm-hmm.
getting that jaw brought forward on the bottom, and then we'll do some tongue tie releases and the next steps from there. So there are definitely steps to come, but we're just in a little bit of an in between right now.
Which makes
But
sense.
yeah,
Yeah. Eh,
it was fun though going to a 7-year well child check with our same family doctor who mentioned his huge tonsils and adenoids. And he looked in there and he said, "Those are looking way better." And
Wow.
I said something about yeah, really glad we've been doing the expansion. And he said, "Any more sleep apnea?" I said, "Not a thing." And he said, "I think it's a really good thing you did that. You just gave him room for all of that to just grow in properly and just made some more space in there." So
Mm-hmm.
and that was also nice having a family doctor who maybe isn't super familiar with what all we're doing, but aware enough like, hey, those were huge. Now there's more room. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
that's better. And just having that support there to
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And that's another
just
thing that
back up
we
what you're
see because
doing.
so many of them were not trained. They don't
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
So that's not their fault either. But we're
Nope.
so many of them, once they hear about it, go, oh, I mean,
Yeah.
it's life changing for the medical professionals that find out.
Yeah.
I mean, all the
Yeah,
way
so I
across
am
the board.
excited to see what all is the fallout. Um, we aren't the only family in our community that goes to see Dr. Christensen. We aren't the only family in our community that uses the same doctor. You know, who knows how many recommendations get sent down? We don't know.
Right.
And that's okay. It's not our job is to just do the best with what we have and let the
Exactly.
Lord do the rest.
Exactly. And share what you can.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing here, which
Yep.
is amazing. So I want to shift just slightly
Mhm.
for a parent that's about to start this journey with
Mhm.
the expanders on a day-to-day basis, how hard is this to manage, just so they can kind of set their expectations?
Sure. That's going to depend on the child. Some children find it painful to have the expansion done. Some children are fine with it, and then it gets more painful later. That was how my kids were. Jubal
Okay.
and Tilly both started about the same time. And I was bracing myself for, this hurts, ow, that kind of thing. The first handful of weeks, they laughed instead of tickled. Thought, okay, well, great, I'll take that. But then as things progressed and things were getting pushed farther apart, then there was more discomfort with the turning. But it's just 1 or 2 turns a day, whatever the recommendation is. And so you can be tough, kid. I know
Mm-hmm.
it hurts, but
Mm-hmm.
if you sometimes we would just, tell them, if you're brave and do a good job, here's a chocolate chip when you're done, like
Hey, there you go.
give them incentive for being brave and being cooperative.
Which is awesome. I love that. So I usually at the end of a podcast, I will turn it over to the guest, because you guys are why people are tuning in. You're the ones that have lived the tale and have the expertise. Is there anything that you would like to leave with our listeners, with other parents at this moment? Just a last thought.
Fight the guilt. Any of that lingering guilt over, I wish I could have, I wish I had, what if? None of that is in our control. It's not in our hands. We know what we know and we do the best we can with what we have. And the guilt and the bitterness, the anxiety, the stress, all of that's really bad for your health too.
That's
So
true. That's true.
so just
So
let it
true.
go and learn to just open your hands, receive what you're given, and do the best with what it is. And make tomorrow better than today, and let yesterday be yesterday, and learn from the mistakes of yesterday and move on.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much for sharing your story and Jubal's story.
I'm
I
glad
really
we could be
appreciate it,
here.
Kathleen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks for inviting me
absolutely.
on, Rebecca.
Oh, of course. Of course.